This time on Poll Hub, the debate over vaping has a twist, a polling twist, which is why we're talking about it. At least 2 polls are being used to make an argument about whether vaping should be banned. And these polls have some, well, issues. We'll explain. Then long-term data over how hard it is for husbands when their wives make more money than they do. In some cases, that's not always true. Really interesting numbers about marriage and money. Hey, and that's never the source of arguments. We'll try and keep it civil. And hi, everybody. Welcome to Poll Hub. I'm J.D. Dapper, Director of Innovation here at the Marist Poll.
And I'm Barbara Carvalho, Director of the Marist Poll.
And I'm Lee Marigoff, Director of the Marist College Institute for Public Opinion.
Vaping has gotten a lot of attention for really good reasons because of some of the health impacts and some of the unknown health impacts that are happening among people who are using vaping devices. There's a lot of questions about it. We want to take a look at it through a slightly different lens, which is the polling lens, and how polls are being used in some of this debate. On September 11th, the president said that he was going to issue a ban of flavored e-cigarettes and vaping devices. And since then, there's been a lot of stories in the political press that that's not going to happen now. And some of that has been intimated. It's been intimated that his campaign manager, Brad Parscale, shared with him internal polls that showed if you do that, you're going to lose battleground states, or you're going to lose voters in battleground states who are vapers. But there's a problem. Well, there's more than one problem with that poll. Barb?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of problems. And actually, Jay, as part of our Poll Hub Academy, you actually have done a little bit of a little feature on the issue of when a poll is sponsored by someone who has an interest in the outcome of the poll. And in this particular instance, McLaughlin Associates, who does a lot of Republican polling and a lot of and for the president, but also a lot of advocacy polling, but are actually very good pollsters, did a poll in battleground states, and they had quite a significant number of people who responded to the survey, nearly 4,669 people, and it looks like they dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's, and you go through all the results, which show that people very much want to continue to have the option of e-cigarettes. They're very much against a ban, and then you kind of look down and you find out that these 4,600 people were adult vapor consumers in battleground states. That was conducted online via an email invitation distributed to 121,000 adult vapor consumers in these states, and sponsored by
the Vapor Technology Association, who I'm thinking is probably pro on the question.
So that's the first problem, is the sponsor. What's the problem with the email and opt-in?
Well, it's an opt-in, so people are making the choice as to whether they want to jump and do this. But I was struck by the absence of where did they find these vapor users, the big number?
The 121,000.
Yeah. Well, I'm suspecting that either they did some kind, and again, this is all speculation. There's no transparency on how the sample was actually gotten. If it was supported and sponsored by by the industry, they probably have a means of doing that, or there could have been an opt-in survey, which could have occurred on websites that have to do either with selling vaping products or something along those lines. In other words, if they're saying that these are consumers, these are people who have at some point, intersected with the industry to purchase some kind of a product. So it's not exactly a representative poll about what Americans think on the issue and whether or not there should be a ban.
And then to conclude, I think from this, that these are single issue voters in the battleground states, which could tip those battleground states, is going beyond what the
Way too
data
far.
suggests, as far as we know.
It is somewhat reminiscent, though. Back in the 1950s, there was a lot of research that was done on smoking itself.
Okay.
And there was a scientific consensus at that time that smoking was not healthful and that it could, in fact, cause cancer. After that point, there was a very strong push by the industry to first do their own research and to also then take very credible research and parse out information that was of benefit to them. So this is not a new strategy.
Right.
This is a very old strategy, particularly when an entire sector is at stake.
So what's interesting here is this was used to influence the president. This was an internal poll used really to influence the president, although there were some op-eds, especially in some conservative sites that he presumably reads or looks at. And the key number here that is highlighted is these vapor consumers approve of the job Donald Trump is doing as president, 51% to 44%. However, quote, if the Trump administration bans the sale of flavors in all nicotine vapor products, 74% would be less likely to vote for him. Now, he's presented this data, and it's in battleground states.
Boy, is that going to get attention.
And that's going to get attention. So that's one poll. There's another poll that's been making the rounds, and there are a couple problems there. One, it's from 2016.
Sure.
But there's another
prior
problem.
to all the outbreak of lung injuries. And
Right. So it's you can't really take any data from that and tell us what people are thinking now.
But
there's
really,
other
really
issues.
important lesson if we're all about polls, which we hopefully are on this podcast. We talk about question wording, and people like to look at question wording, and did that question wording seem to be biased or leading, double-barreled, what have you. Very often people ignore the fact that question order can provide a context. The sequence of the questions themselves can provide a context which then might sway public opinion. So in this case, again, an industry poll, I believe.
Although we couldn't verify that because
also.
of the fact there wasn't a lot of transparency behind the methodology.
So they asked a series of 5 different questions leading up to the kicker question, whether you'd be more or less likely to support or oppose. And questions like the government should not create obstacles as alternative to cigarettes. The overregulating of vapor products take away adult consumer choice. It makes no sense to limit technology and innovation. Government should not be able to take away an adult's right to enjoy a legal product.
These aren't leading questions at all.
And those all got over 95 to 97% agreement. And then the one last question was vapor products should be subject to taxes and restrictions similar to other tobacco products. 77% say, I don't like that. So we've really got the table set here. And then after discussing these issues some more, are you more or less likely to vote for a candidate who opposes these types of taxes and regulations on vapor products? And lo and behold, they're more likely to vote against these people.
The worst thing about this is there's actually a really good scientific poll done about vaping, which is not an unserious issue. I mean, we don't want to make this all about politics.
No.
People are dying because of this, or perhaps because of this. There's medical investigators trying to figure this out. And Pew did a
there's a couple of pretty serious research efforts to find out where Americans also stand on this issue. The first thing is Pew collected a lot of information just about what is the use of vaping products in the U.S. And one of the things they did find was about 9% of adults do use vaping products, but that is really clustered among people under 30. So adults 18 to 29, over a quarter of them have used a vaping product. And if you actually go under 18, you can actually one study that was done on the use of different substances, which has been done over time with seniors in high school, actually found that 37% of seniors had actually tried vaping at some point. So it is a very serious issue. The other thing that the research did find is that students or young people who try some kind of a vaping product are then also more likely to become smokers. So though even over time, smoking has declined among young people, they're much more likely to think that vaping is less harmful, and that if they do try an e-cigarette, they're more likely in the future to actually
Which is the
smoke.
principal argument in favor of e-cigarettes, is that it's a way to get people off of cigarettes and stop smoking, in that in some way it's a nicotine delivery device that is more safe.
So I guess the bottom line in this, I'm thinking, is buyer beware when it comes to polls as well.
And if you do want to find out whether Americans want to ban this or not, the Kaiser Family Foundation is a health organization that does lots of scientific polling on all types of health issues. So it's a great place to go. And their October poll of this year found that 52% of Americans do want a ban on flavored e-cigarettes. Interestingly, more divided if you want to ban all e-cigarettes. It's 49 support a ban, 47 do not. And among those under 30 years of age, only 36% of them want a ban. So it is an interesting issue. It's a controversial issue. It's an issue where people are divided. And
I would think it's an issue that people are still learning about. I think this is one, that's not the final word in public opinion on this kind of issue. And I think that's why it's been somewhat of a political football, because you can mold public opinion a little bit. It's not set yet.
So now let's turn to a very non-controversial issue. Marriage and money.
See you later.
So what we found here is that there is a study which used the panel study of income dynamics data set. And let me just take a quick little aside about what exactly that is, because that is a panel that was put together in the late 1960s to actually take a look at whether the war on poverty, all that legislation that was passed during that time, whether they had a positive or negative impact on people's lives. So that's where this panel started, and then developed over the decades to include not just low-income Americans, but Americans who are more representative of the country as a whole. Later on, it also included immigrants, and it followed these families over the decades. So the way of replenishing the panel became when children who were part of these households in the beginning then grew up, had their own households and their own children, and they've continued to follow these families through the years.
Which is all this you think is kind of cool.
I think it's totally cool.
I can tell. You
can tell my excitement.
Absolutely.
Now, certainly there are issues with panels, but there are some concerns about representativeness over time. But it is a very reputable panel on which many studies have been done. And one of the things that we're looking at this time is a study which was done which showed that men become emotionally more distressed if their wife starts earning a lot more money than they do. Actually, what the study found was that, and this is in all seriousness,
it's kind of a you.
Is that it is a you, that when men have to be the sole breadwinner,
there's a lot of stress.
There's a lot of stress.
Sure.
And then when women start becoming the sole breadwinner,
There's a lot of stress.
There's a lot of stress for men.
Men are just
so
stressed.
guys, I mean, this is.
I feel the tables just got
the
turned,
midpoint,
Jay.
just real quick, I thought this was interesting. There's the bottom of the U, where men feel the less amount of stress, is when women make 40% of the household income.
So less than half.
That's less than half.
But bringing in
half.
significant
So a
dollars.
60-40 split is
Helping out.
Does this
Helping out.
resonate?
Well, I don't know, Barb. What do you think, Jay? The tables got
no,
turned.
No. You've been married.
Listen to
right.
these
You've
been
guys
married.
start
All right.
fudging.
Does this make sense? I guess it makes sense in some degree. I think that, people individually would respond differently to this in terms of their own lifestyle, life circumstances. But I think in terms of a national data set, I can think how attitudes towards income, where it comes from, and how that impacts on the household. I think this makes sense in terms of stress creation.
So one thing that stood out to me was that these numbers don't hold when the woman was making more at the start of the marriage.
True.
That was interesting.
So there's an expectations game here. If you go in and your wife is, I'll use stereotypical things. She's a surgeon and you're working at Starbucks. You don't have as much stress as if you started out as a surgeon and you end up at Starbucks and she ends up as a surgeon, right?
Well, I get it. I actually understood what you were saying.
And I think if we think about people in our own lives and we think about couples in our own lives where where there is that case where they were married with the wife being more financially successful than the husband. I find the people that we know, they're like that. They're really well balanced. They seem to be very happy. The husband does not seem to be particularly stressed. But it kind of talks to the patriarchy, the male norms, the way that we're raised in many cases as guys. And then you're kind of raised with the expectation you're going to take care of the family, even in this day and age.
That's what's interesting. I think also is the persistence of these identities and these roles, despite there's been incredibly changes during our life.
But I think also in our politics, we've heard a lot about the fact that, on the one hand, the war on women, but really the war on men and the changing and the changing roles of gender in society. Have we not come as far as we think we have?
Well, this suggests maybe not.
Yeah, I think the other thing that is interesting to me is that, and what you just alluded to, is there are these significant changes in the workforce that are among the most detrimental to working class or non-college educated men. They're dropping out of the workforce or they've had the largest decrease in earnings power since the 70s. And the role of women in the workforce has increased. Now, that women still aren't making as much as men. I'm not saying that things have balanced out, but it would be interesting to look at this another 10 or 15 years from now as to whether more people are getting married in a situation where there's about equal income or one is a little bit above the other, and whether because people are getting married in this new economic situation where the sole breadwinner is, a luxury that few people can afford, and one person making significantly more than the other in an economy where wages continue to be flat or decline in real terms, maybe that disappears. In other words, the economy in a not terribly great way fixes this problem.
Yeah, that's really an interesting point, Jay, because one of the things that I picked out a similar thing in the study that you had mentioned, that if the couple starts out with a certain, economic, and also economic relationship, that the change, that doesn't seem to affect the emotional feeling between them, and I wonder how much what they're seeing in the data over time is about a relationship changing over time because those economic relationships have changed.
So the expectations going in are not what ends up happening throughout the course of a marriage.
Or the change in the career of, one spouse versus the other spouse.
Or the workforce, how those changes change, force changes on all of us.
And whether, one spouse has had, better career opportunities than the other. And those are the kinds of things that actually can, cause emotional strain, among partners as well. So certainly this is an interesting dynamic to be able to look at over time in families.
I think we do have a case here at the Marist poll where we can look at this from two different angles. So we have Lee and his wife and credit cards.
Credit cards.
Oh,
no.
No,
you're going to get him into trouble.
No, and then we have Daniela Charter, who is one of the directors here, and her husband's use of the credit cards, and she's the one that goes crazy over it, right? I'm tossing Danielle under the bus, but
she'd be happy about that.
She'd be happy about it.
Yeah, we have listened to her cell phone ping every time.
Right, every time something gets charged. But it seems to me, I mean, and these are two couples. You guys have both been married for a long time.
Now one is a boomer and one is Gen X.
That's true, but this money issue comes at it. It's really the same kind of flip side of the same coin, right?
Yeah. On the advice of counsel. Let me just say that the boomer Gen X thing that I have to think about that one a little bit, but I have a solution to all of this. Okay, and that is you win the lotto. Okay, you get it. You split the ticket.
You are in survey research, and you know what odds are.
And you actually play.
Well, it beats getting hit by lightning. So you play the lotto. You both buy the half the ticket.
You have better odds of being struck by lightning than winning the lottery.
Yes.
No, I hope you save this particular episode, for anything down the road. But I was suggesting you split the cost of the ticket, you split the winnings.
Oh, I see.
No friction.
Hang on,
no stress.
Hang on. One other thought to end this on. To end this on a little bit better note. There have been other studies on economics and money and families, and one of the things they do find is that if you are earning less than $80,000 a year, if your salary is doubled, that is a great kind of charge to your relationship, to the family. The emotional impact of that change is very significant in a positive way. But as you move beyond $80,000,
there's no commensurate increase.
It starts to decrease.
There's the law of diminishing return.
Yeah, show me the money
until you reach six figures when there really isn't any change with an increase.
The end
that
result
was the
of
good
this,
note.
No.
It is a good note because you're reaching a point where there is a income satiation point.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is a very good thing.
I think the other thing to draw from this is that men feel stressed about money in this way. Come on. Stress about money in a marriage, that is a two-way street, and everybody feels it. It's the biggest problem in most marriages. It's the thing that causes the most amount of stress. And I would hope that we would draw from this that everybody feels the stress, and figuring out a way to deal with it is the way to a long, happy marriage. Right, Lee?
Yeah, I think the way I draw from this is that I'm much more comfortable talking and better insights talking about politics than textbooks.
That's okay. Nancy will be listening, and I don't think you've said anything.
She's probably going to be a guest in our next episode, whether we want her here or not.
Equal time. Spouse, equal time.
That will do it for this edition of Poll Hub. Poll Hub is a production of the Marist Poll at Marist College in Poughkeepsie, New York. Thanks very much to Mary Griffith, our executive producer, and today Ashley Soriano, our producer, who kept us on time.
Yay.
And always thanks also to Casey Schaff, our editor.
Yep, and we want to thank the Roper Center, as we do each week, for any kind of insight they can provide in terms of their survey questions. Lots of archives there that really can help on all kinds of topics. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach out to us on social media. Marist Poll can be found on Twitter, Marist Poll on Facebook and Instagram. And most of us will be back, I think, based on this last program next week. At least I hope to be back.
Is it Nancy going to take you out?
I don't know. We're going to have to see.
Well, if you don't come back, we'll know. We'll know where to look.
It's been wonderful doing this with you guys. All 123 episodes.
So, other than that last moment, for the most part, you probably listen to this podcast because you're really interested in polls. And if you want to learn more about polling and the things that we talk about in great detail and depth each week, check out our online learning platform. It's called the Marist Poll Academy. It's visual, it's engaging, it's online, and best of all, it's free. So check it out. The address, the URL for that is in our show notes. Finally, if you like what you hear on Poll Hub, please consider leaving a review on whatever app that you're listening to this on. Positive reviews help other people find us so you can share the love, pay it forward. And while you're at it, go ahead and subscribe.